Hi, Emily. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. I can't wait for the listeners to hear all that you've been up to. It sounds like you've been busy trying to reach as many people as possible, educate as many people as possible. And I can't wait for you to share with the listeners how you've been doing that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a busy season, but a very fruitful and exciting season.
That's great. That's great. So before we dive into a few particulars, can you share with our listeners in this kind of like general sense, what it is that you do in your practice as far as, from a day to day?
Of course. So I have a one-on-one practice and I have a group program called Root Cause Formula. And I work with predominantly women, age range around 20 to 45, a little bit. A few clients are above that age range, and guide them on their health journey. I work mostly with people dealing with chronic illness, anything from mold toxicity to Lyme disease to parasites to hormonal imbalances like PCOS. And so it's a full evaluation process and helping them navigate that journey. And for some people, they know that we'll be working together anywhere from 12 to 24 months because they have not felt well their entire life. They've been failed by the medical system. I know there's a time and place for it. So I'm, stepping into this space as just a voice of hope for them and a game plan to get them back to feeling their best.
That's great. So tell me a little bit about how you got started. So did you always want to do this? Were you always in the more natural health space? What did you, go to school for? How did you pivot? Those kinds of things. So how did you get started here?
I always feel like everyone in the health space was not healthy growing up. That's what gets us to this space. And so similar to so many others, I had a very unhealthy lifestyle. I would have McDonald's and Taco Bell and fast food 24/7 and was not taking care of my body. And even amidst all of that, was able to go on to play collegiate soccer at the University of Tennessee and realize that the better I feel my body, the better I play, the better I recover. And that got me interested in functional medicine and really showed me the importance of eliminating toxins and eating better. But the damage I'd done for so many years of my life caught up to me, and post-college, my health crashed. I sought out a bunch of doctors and specialists. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, an autoimmune liver disease, and was given a plethora of different opinions on basically Band-Aids. And no one, up until I found a functional medicine doctor, really said, why did these things happen? How do we address the root cause that led to this dysfunction? So I enrolled in both the Integrative Health Practitioner program and the Nutritional Therapy program, really similar timeframes, and did school together, because I realized in this process, though we think this field is saturated, there's so many more people that are needed. And I felt like there was no one supporting women from every angle. And so once I graduated, I worked alongside my functional medicine doctor, learned a lot through that process, plugged into every possible online summit, webinar, podcast. There's so much information out there. I mean, Dr. Cabral puts out podcasts all the time, and you just learn and you navigate it. And I tried to get out of this field numerous times, actually. Went on and said, I'm going to become a personal trainer. I got my NASM CPT, became a certified Orange Theory coach, but I always felt the tug back into this space. It's like, nope, this is where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I started out in the more fitness field, and I felt like, oh, this is only getting me so far. I can show somebody what to do with their body, and I can, show them how to work out and what the importance of, functional movement is. But it's like, oh, there's so much more. And then I kind of grew from that. So same thing, there was this tug of, you knew so much more than just that. And you knew if you were able to get it into the hands of other people, that you'd be able to help them so much more.
Yeah. And so many people do need it. So many people need it.
Yes. And I think too, with exercise, there's a whole group of people that can be sick enough that that's not the first step we need to take, whereas it can just kind of dig them further into the hole that they're in. And we need to get them a little bit stronger before we start pushing their body. There's gentle movement that's important, of course, but sometimes, exercising more and eating less is definitely not the answer.
Oh, it's not the answer. I can think of, this is fresh on my mind, 2 clients this previous week. And it's taken a lot of me having to take myself out of the situation sometimes because I'm a very empathetic person. But if these 2 individuals and clients I'm thinking of, these women, were to get on any sort of exercise program right now, like they would end up in the hospital because their biggest concern is, how am I going to make it from my bed to my bathroom to go without my legs collapsing? Mm-hmm. Some of my clients are in wheelchairs, and one of them tagged me in a post recently that, after a year of, going through this health journey in the functional medicine space, she was in a wheelchair at one point, was able to go skiing with her husband. And that was like her huge win and redemption. And we still have work to do. But with these individuals, there's times where I'm like, max you can do is stretching and foam rolling right now. They can't walk. They can't do anything. Exercise your brain, read, do Sudoku puzzles, exercise your mind, exercise breath work. Because there's no way that these people could do an intense exercise program. Absolutely not.
Of course. Yeah. And it's so important to be able to have the, vast, like you said, like you could exercise your mind. There's so many ways to take brain detox and, sleeping. Everybody thinks, you have to be exercising really hard to get your lymphatic system draining, but there's so many ways that you can optimize those functions without depleting your body even more than it already is.
Absolutely. The brain detoxes at night. So when people are, so a simple thing people can do is, and this is something I always challenge and encourage clients to do, is turn your phone off 2 hours before bed. Airplane mode in the kitchen, do something restorative, whether it's an Epsom salt bath or reading before bed or breath work before bed or whatever calms them down, because that phone and that blue light is stimulating for the brain, and that's going to inhibit that deep and REM sleep process. And if that happens, you're not detoxing and draining from the brain. It only predominantly happens when you sleep.
Yes. Yep. Of course. Great. So let's kind of go back to your beginning journey. I'm curious. So you, how did you initially start? And then how did you get from, doing the certifications to then just starting your own practice? Did you kind of linearly move from one to the other?
So what happened was I was in nutritional therapy school and finishing up IHP and NTP school. And in that process, started shadowing the functional medicine doctor. And you sit on enough appointments and you hear what these people are coming in with, whether it's Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or chronic fatigue syndrome. And you learn so many little nuggets in that. And in the same time, I wasn't fully practicing my one-on-one practice yet, but people started asking me for help. And so I was a part of a local CrossFit gym, and I actually started working with a lot of the athletes. And I kind of started in the fitness spectrum because it was part of my past and history with things that I think get glanced over. Are we eating food, not processed foods, not refined foods, but like, what does our food intake look like? And how does our recovery look like? So I started consulting CrossFit athletes. And from that, they saw success and word starts to spread. And your best marketing is success from people. It truly is. And so there were some of these people that I actually helped for free early on because I was trying to learn and gather knowledge. And from there, then people come in that have, hey, Em, I'm dealing with blank. So then, once I did starting accepting clients, I started having kind of a flow that would come into the functional medicine office to meet with me. And you just kind of take the nuggets you've learned through IHP school and my NTP school, and then you apply yourself in podcasts and you see what works and what doesn't. And referrals just started growing and growing and growing and growing. And I ended up breaking away once COVID hit, because you can't be in person, to an all virtual practice. I was like, how am I going to navigate this? But with that virtual practice, what happens? Your reach goes up. You're no longer inclined to just the people in your local community. And so once I started bringing in virtual clients, that brings in more virtual clients, and word spreads and people are getting better. And in that process, I always like to tell people I had to put myself out there a lot. You're not just going to have clients come knocking on your door. I was doing tons of IGTVs and live videos and free webinars for people about hormone balance, how to clean up the home, where to start on your health journey. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck because they're like, where are the clients? I feel like I don't have any. And I say, I don't see you on because people come to me for advice. I'm like, I don't see you on your stories. If I go to your page, I don't have any posts that I could share to my feed where my followers would gain value from it. What webinars have you offered? And so I did a ton of that. I was going live every single week. I was creating shareable content on my feed. And it takes doing that for people to be like, okay, wow, this girl, I resonate with her. I would love just insider advice on my health. And then word spreads, people have success, and your practice just builds on itself over time. So this has been now close to a 5-year progressive journey because I really started kind of meeting with people when I was around 21. I'm 26 now, and it's just built upon itself year after year.
Yeah, that's great. And I think you bring up such a good point about that, being front facing and building relatability and trust.
Right.
Because as human beings, our health is such a personal issue, and getting vulnerable with somebody that you can kind of feel like you resonate with is really an important part of the steps to taking, action and being like, yeah, you know what? I think I do want to work with somebody. This totally seems like it's something that's going on with me. And so offering that type of support for people. And like you said, it's, no one's paying you to get on your Instagram stories, maybe once after you have a certain amount of followers, but in that initial stage, you're really doing that out of your own time. And I also think passion comes with that too, right? Because a lot of people get into this. They're like, you know what, I'm into health and I'm into, coaching, but you clearly had a passion for just telling people your story and wanting people to know that there is a way to get better and offering that at no cost. And then things start to build. It's such an important part to keep in mind.
Yep. Passion is huge. Confidence is huge. Consistency is huge. Knowing that this field is not early on time for money. If that was the case, I would have never gotten to this point because it is a lot of unpaid hours, a lot of unpaid work and commitment and application. And you're not paid to listen to the podcast and take the notes on it and apply it to your clients' plans. Like that's unpaid hours, but the dividends, it pays off in the end. And when you see that glimmer of hope and that light switch go off in people, you're like, this matters. This matters. This offers hope to so many people that are just looking for it.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. So I'm curious, were there any obstacles in your process? So, we've kind of touched upon on unpaid hours and that, but when you went from saying, doing the CrossFit meeting with those clients in person and then kind of taking the leap to start something more virtual and take things under your own wing, what were some obstacles in that way?
I think doubt is such a big part of this process. Can I help people? Will I have enough clients? Can I make this a full-time job? Will I be able to have enough clients to make this a full-time job? Can I afford rent at my place? These are all, I think, limiting beliefs that come into our mind. And I think deep down that when I didn't have enough clients to keep a full-time income in this space, your brain starts to tell you, you can't do this. This isn't sustainable. You're never going to meet with enough people to pay all of your bills. And so I think that's also why I went into coaching, because why? It is every week you have a set schedule. You're going to get paid a certain amount. It is security. And that is the decision I made. So the biggest obstacle for me early on was that, to be perfectly honest, because when I got into this space and I started on this journey, part of where my application and passion lied was I didn't have a lot of income coming in. I had just moved back from college and I was living at home for a while. I lived off my savings and I was living at home for a while. And at one point, and this is important to note, at one point when I was doing all of this, I had 6 other streams of income. I was babysitting. I was cooking for families. I was cooking for 7 families. And I was doing everything I possibly could to have income coming in so that I could spend my extra hours learning and growing a practice, because I knew that that's what I wanted to do. But there was still my mind obstacle of, can I do this? Will I be able to do this? Will I have enough clients that come to me or get better? And when I finally just said no, once kind of everything in the world changed, I'm going to throw all of my energy into this, all my eggs in this basket, got nothing else. That's when it changed. That's when everything changed.
Okay. And did something in you change? I mean, I think that this is going to be something that resonates with so many of our listeners, whether it's leaving a job and doing this, or whether it's, throwing all of your eggs into that one basket, whether it needs to be a full-time income or not, can you help people? The doubt, was there something in you that kind of clicked? Was it something someone said? Was there, mentorship involved? What sets it apart that way?
I think it was that everything was taken away. I was furloughed from my coaching position. And I think everyone in the world during that season of time, I don't want to blame it just on that, because I think I still would have ended up in this spot eventually. But when everything, or what you feel like everything in that moment, is stripped away, you don't really have a choice, honestly. And there was definitely something in me changed. My confidence changed. My commitment changed. It was in that moment where I said, I had never hosted a free webinar before. And so I was like, you know what? I'm putting it on my calendar. I don't know how to do this webinar. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what I'm going to speak on, but I'm going to put it for this date at this time. And I'm going to show up even if there's only one person there. And I put things on my calendar and schedule, and I jumped into that. And yeah, it was scary. It was scary because I was like, what if people don't show up? What if I do this with my words, which still happens. There's so many times where people ask me things and I'm like, I don't know. My answer is, I don't know. But it's amazing to me that when I started applying myself in that way, mentors were coming into my life, but they were asking me what I was doing. It's so funny how some of the people you look up to that are your mentors start reaching out saying, teach me more about this. How did you learn this? Wow, you're really educated in this. Like, your stuff, you're really helping people. And of course, throughout the process, different mentors came into, my life, whether it was someone that helped me on my health journey, the functional medicine doctor, Dr. Bob Rakowski, who's been hugely pivotal in my life, Dr. Jabin Moore, a great friend and colleague of mine who works predominantly with kids with PANS, pandas, autism, ALS. He's incredible. And just our friendship, like, that was mentorship back and forth. And I think when you expose yourself in this field, that happens, and you learn from colleagues. Dr. Jess has become a great friend of mine and a dear colleague. And we're always, talking back and forth on how to help people and learning nuggets of wisdom in that. So I definitely think that mentorship comes naturally. I've never had to go seek a mentor, but Cabral has been a mentor for years from afar, even though I've never had a conversation with him. Just his podcast alone has been amazing, especially when I was starting out, just trying to absorb all the information possible.
Yes, that's so great. And if you had to pick one thing that all of that taught you that we could kind of pass on as inspiration to the listeners, what would it be?
To just start and honor where you're at with what you know. You don't have to be an expert to start doing a webinar or a live. Pick one thing that you're like, wow, I wish I would have known this when I started, and start sharing that information, whether it's a PDF that people can download for free, or a shareable post, or a live that people can reference. I think that that's where people get hung up, is they wait for a certain threshold of education before they actually put themselves out there. So what I've learned through this whole process is, wow, I wish 5 years ago I would have talked about the issues with not fueling your body enough for exercise and what that does to your stress systems. And so just starting is what I tell people to do.
Yes. Yep. And I think too, with having that, tendency to think that I need to know everything, I need to be the expert. I always tell, upcoming coaches that ask me for advice, in most situations, you're still the expert. You still have valuable information that you can share with the client that's working with you, or they wouldn't be seeking your help. And so sharing whatever you know is going to be beneficial for them. Even if there's still more to learn, that's because you're in the field, but you can still be instrumental to someone's life, even if you still have X, Y, and Z to learn. You already know A, B, and C. And so share that.
Absolutely. You drive by and there is lines wrapped around McDonald's, and there's so many people that need help and have no idea that that McDonald's burger, fries, and Coke is doing damage to their gut. And I think that another place that people get hung up is whether they're an IHP or another health coach, they follow a very specific group of people on social media. And I think that they compare themselves to those individuals. And we just think that everyone knows what we know. Like everyone is equipped to know that red light glasses can help with hormone balance, or drinking a certain amount of water can be helpful, or eliminating certain foods. But there are so many people in the world, like chronic illness and just illness in general is at an all-time high. There's so many people that need help that I think that we have blinders on to not recognize. We have our eyes set on, oh, I need to help this specific person, or I'm not educated enough. Like, there's people that literally need education on, hey, McDonald's probably isn't the best thing for your gut, or this is what a healthy carb and fat looks like. There's people that need to be in that space that offer that. Like, I don't even have time to talk to that stuff because the people I see have already addressed all of it. They come to me, they've been on AIP for years, but what about the people who are like, what's AIP? What's a healthy fat? What's a healthy carb? Like there's a need for that. There's a void there.
Yes. Yeah. Such a good point about comparing yourself to others in the field, because you're right. It's when you're in it and when you kind of live this day to day, and you do have all the, social media contacts that I'm sure, you have, and people that I'm following, it almost seems like, yeah, everybody knows this stuff. Like, why am I so special? But you're right. All of the people that have no idea that they use or exist in this world, and that there's somebody that can help them beyond the point that they've already been helped, by maybe a regular doctor.
Right.
Where are those, people reaching out? And You're absolutely right. It can start with, I usually say like a crumb, like just give them a crumb, and it continues to build.
Yep. And just keep sharing content. It'll reach someone. I was on an IG live yesterday with a skincare company, and their followers are a lot different than my followers, right? Like all of their followers are about beauty and skincare and topical solutions. And then you bring me on to this live that they do, and they're like, we're going to pivot and we're going to bring on Emily, and she's going to speak to how no topical solution is going to fix the fact that parasites or mold or some sort of co-infection bacteria can cause your face to break out. And I mean, their followers, you can see in the comments, like the emojis of like brain exploding, or like, what? Like, no idea. Wait, what are parasites? People can have parasites. And my followers are all like, yeah, we've been around the block a few times. We already know this, old news. But they had never heard of this before, right? They've never been exposed to it. So I think that that's such an important part of, hey, there's so many people where if you give them a crumb of, hey, there could be leaky gut leading to your dry eyes, or your gut being distended, or feeling tired in the afternoon.
Yes. Yeah. And it's really about getting people to understand, which the name of your company, Root Cause, that everything has a root. Like, you just don't wake up one day and your eyes decide to get dry, and you don't wake up one day with Hashimoto's. You don't just wake up one day with some sort of, massive bloating. There's you've gotten to that point for usually many reasons, and figuring out what it is so that you not only don't have to chase it for the rest of your life, by masking symptoms, but you can also experience a vitality that most people aren't even familiar with. And I'm sure a lot of your really sick clients aren't necessarily falling in this category, but I'm sure you've met with people before that they're like, oh my God, I didn't even know I could have this much energy. Yes. Or I didn't even know my bowel movements could be this good. Or I didn't know that my mood was, more down than it actually was. And now I feel almost like superhuman. This is crazy. And so people don't even really understand how much better they could feel.
You're so right. I get that all the time where they're like, Emily, I just realized I've been depressed for 20 years of my life. I just realized that my eyes have hurt when I go outside and the sun hits it for 20 years of my life. I just realized that I shouldn't have achy joints when I wake up in the morning. So you're absolutely right. We've lost total touch with our signs and symptoms, and they're not normal, and they've been normalized in our society because you go to a doctor and it's what's going to keep you out of a hospital bed, not what's going to make you thrive and feel amazing.
Yes. Yep. And I always say, just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal, because most people that do have more depressed moods or that, aches and joints, all their friends in their 50s are like, my joints hurt too when I get up, or like, my mood's not what it used to be, but hey, I'm getting old. And then it, like you said, it gets completely normalized in our society, and people just think, well, I guess this is as good as it's going to get. I'll just hang on for another 20 years and see where I get. And just because it's common, it does not make it normal. That's for sure.
Yep. Totally.
Okay. What about, and I think we've done this a little bit, but if there was one piece of advice, you kind of already said, like, just get started, and kind of not listen to that doubt. Do you have another piece of advice that if you were to give to our listeners, whether they're coming out of IHP, whether they're in another health coaching, practice, they're wanting to grow their business, what kind of advice would you?
I think building relationships with your audience, whatever audience that is. I think age gaps, the reach may be different. So some people may thrive in a podcast setting. Some people may thrive in a YouTube setting. I use predominantly Instagram, but people have to know you. And so starting to build that relationship, you have to initiate that. And so going on your stories daily, and sometimes I know that's scary and hard for people, but even if you're not educating, let people get to know you, because that's such an important piece. So whether it's a Facebook Live or a podcast or a YouTube channel or Instagram stories, that is going to be such an important piece, because like you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, it's really hard for someone to book with someone they don't know. It's really, really difficult. They want to know the person. They feel like if they watch your stories enough, they already know you come consult time. And then I think the second thing to that, other than creating shareable content, would be to niche down. And I know people will give me kickback on that and say, no, like I can help everyone. But when you help everyone, you limit your ability to really learn. And when you see the same consistent, whether it's age group or signs and symptoms, you learn so much, and you learn patterns, and you become a specialist in a certain area. And so I know it's hard for people to niche down, but when I said, you know what, I'm going to work with women, mostly aged 20 to, 45, 50, there's a few other outliers that are, outside of that age range, but that's the majority of what it is, who struggle with mental, emotional, anxiety, depression, and potential things like Lyme, parasites, or mold. My practice just took off because I became an expert and niche down in that area. So, if you're listening to this, write down, the age that you feel like you want to start with, knowing you can pivot in the future, and all the things that you're the most passionate about, and pick 3 and focus on those 3 in that age group and run with it.
Yes. And it does allow you to super focus on learning, not only, helping people with one thing, but like you said, learning one thing and really fine tuning your expertise in that specific thing. So yes, That's great advice. All right. So we know you've done IHP, maybe read The Rain Barrel Effect.
Yep.
I'm curious, do you have any other books or any other kind of material or places that you would say, like, listen, if you want to learn more about X or you want to really fine tune Y, what would some educational, and it can be a single book or educational things be?
People that know me, I didn't even get into reading, honestly. And it's funny because Rain Barrel Effect, I read it like 5 or 6 years ago or whenever. It was a long time ago. I read it whenever it came out. And other than that, like, I don't like reading health books. I don't like reading health books. I'd rather audio. I'm a very, whatever way you learn from hearing things, like, I absorb it. I remember it. I absorb it. And so I listened to a ton of health podcasts. And I don't have the specific names off the top of my head because it was from a bunch of different sources, but I would stream those on walks. And so I was listening to health podcasts all the time. And there is online conferences and seminars all the time. So like Apex Energetics, they put on awesome ones. Anytime they'd send emails about upcoming webinars or online, I would register for it. The Lyme conventions online, like iLads, I'd register for that. The Truth About Cancer, I'd register for it. And I tuned into a lot of those online events, and it grew my knowledge in incredible ways. Because if I read, it's usually not a health book. It's more of like a self-development book or something along those lines.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I love listening, and I still love a good, like, nice, crisp notebook and a nice pen. And I like to listen and write like I'm back in college. And everybody learns differently, but it's nice to be able to multitask and go for a walk and listen to something, or, be cooking dinner and kind of put on a podcast too. And so that you're not only immersed in that one thing, but you're kind of listening and doing other things as well.
Right. Right.
All right. So now what I'd like you to do is share with our listeners if they wanted to find you, where they can find you, online, your social media, kind of all the places that you'll pop up.
Of course. So my social media is just my name, Emily Morrow, on Instagram. That is where I hang out. That's where I predominantly give everything health related on. And then a lot of people also follow my group program account, which is at rootcause_formula. And that's currently the way that if people want to go through a group setting and work with me, that is one way. The other way is I'm kind of growing and expanding my one-on-one practice. And so I have, links in my Instagram bios of how to inquire about those things. But I am not on Facebook. I don't currently have a podcast or a YouTube channel. Not to say it won't happen in the future, but just Emily Morrow on Instagram, then everything else is pretty easy to find.
Okay. And actually, you brought up the group thing. Let's touch upon that, because I'm curious for our listeners to hear what that is like to kind of educate in a group setting. So tell us a little bit about that, how it's structured, how you got into doing that.
Of course. It was structured in the sense that my business partner, Allie Hobson, had reached out to me beginning of 2020, wanting help with her health. And I always say every doctor needs a doctor. Every IHP needs an IHP. Every NTP needs an NTP. You need extra support. It's very hard to be your own practitioner. And she reached out, and I had incorporated a lot of the things I do in my practice. And she actually had said, how cool would it be if we brought this type of information and education in a group setting? And it's like light bulbs went off in our head. And we realized that a huge void and missing puzzle piece in this space is community, and the ability to walk along your journey with other women and have accountability on a weekly basis and be educated throughout the process. Because if you know the why, you're 10 times more likely to do something. And when you think of about a whole day setting, if you repeat yourself, which I was, over and over and over and over and over again in every single consultation, you can take all of those conversations that take maybe 8 hours of the day, condense it into a 1 hour setting, and educate those clients on a weekly basis. So Allie and we accept 30 women into our program through applications only. We run that program every 8 weeks. Her and I are on a Zoom call, and we go over in initial 20 to 30 minute consults. It's quick because we're just basically figuring out what they need based on their blood work and their initial intake form. And we give them their plan. We don't, explain it in full detail. We do that for every single woman of all 30. And then every Monday we get on a Zoom call with them and we educate them behind the why of what we're doing. And then there's forms that they can interact community wise. And it's been so cool. We're like moms to our little babies, where they now have group text and they inspire people on a daily basis. And they have these friends for life that they get to walk along this healing journey with. So that's been such an integrative part, and probably what I'll do moving forward, because those clients that go through that group program, they get better and easier and faster than my one-on-one clients. And I attribute it to the community aspect 100% and the mindset training that's integrated into it.
Yes. Yeah. And when you're as sick as some of these clients likely are, it can be so isolating.
Yes.
There have likely been so many professionals, maybe family members, loved ones, that have kind of brushed them off as crazy, or just, get out of bed. What's the big deal? And having somebody just simply validate the struggle and the place that they're at. I mean, I'm like even getting emotional thinking about it. It can move somebody to great degree to better themselves. And then that, right, it just like trickles to maybe the next person in the group, and everybody just rallies around one another.
Yep. Allie and I get teary eyed, and it is emotional. It is emotional when you feel totally alone. And we read these forms, and the girls' comments and, their wins and also their struggles and other people uplifting them when maybe no one in their life and no one in their family understands or supports them. And Allie and I are reading through them, and we will start crying, on the phone, reading through these forms. And you're exactly right. It is so isolating sometimes. I felt so isolated when I started my journey. I would have given anything to go through a program like this with other women to hold my hand in that process when days were really, really hard, and celebrate the days where I had a huge win.
Yes. Yeah. And that what you're giving to all of them is so beautiful. I'm sure they're all eternally grateful. And like I think we were talking about at the beginning too, then it just ripples out and these women get inspired and they mention it to somebody who knows, what person it's going to touch years down the line because of work that, they've done with you.
Yep. And their story has become part of their future, where now a lot of those women are enrolling in the IHP program. They've realized what a need and void there is in this space, that people need guidance, they need help, and they can use part of their story to help inspire and teach and mentor and consult future clients. So that's really, really cool, because I always say your story is part of a bigger purpose, and you wouldn't have been given that disease or that illness if it wasn't supposed to be part of your future.
Yes. Yep. And I think we mentioned too at the beginning that most people in our field we know what it's been like to be kind of down and out. And when you get better, the passion that it creates to just spread the word. And so, yes, when these women then feel better, they're probably dying to learn more. And what else don't I know? What else haven't I known for all these years? And how can I help people too? It's a beautiful process.
So great. Yep. Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so you clearly have a passion for reaching as many people as possible and sharing everything that you know. Share with our listeners a little bit about the courses that you created that kind of help ensure that you're getting the message out to as many people as possible.
Right. Exactly. You can only do so much as one person. So what I decided to do was create a few different courses. One of them hones in on reading blood chemistry. People go to the doctor every year, most people, and they get their blood work run, most people. And to be able to know and figure out what those markers mean is so empowering. It helps just know your body better and also prevent bad things from happening in the future, or kind of pick up on there's something that's not right here. And so I created 2 blood chem courses. One is just basics of blood chem. It's for the person that just really wants to better understand their own and their family's blood work markers with what do most of these markers mean most of the time. And then I have a more in-depth one where I train either current practitioners or future practitioners in an 8-week live course on the patterns and my roadmap and what I do, so that those practitioners, kind of how Cabral does in IHP, can go out and help the world, because you can't change the world just one person. You need other people to help you do it. And then from a client perspective and standpoint, I realized I needed to create a course on the foundations of where to start on the health journey. You're just getting into this space. You find out you have the diagnosis, or you just don't feel great and you don't know where to start. And so it's called Foundations, and I am about to launch it. It should be out here shortly. We've put a ton of time and energy into it, and I'm doing it alongside my fellow practitioner that I brought on, Madison, who also went through the IHP program. That's how she found me, I'm pretty sure. And it does just that. It will help anybody in the world who just wants to know more about the foundations of health, where to start on the health journey, what, lifestyle, diet, supplementation can look like and do for them, so that, since you're only one person, they can take that and at least get really, really, really rooted in the foundations before they maybe approach a practitioner to guide them on the more specific details and fine tune that process.
Yeah, that's great. And the whole thing with the blood work is that something that's so accessible to everybody, right? Like not everybody has the resources to run every single functional medicine test, but if you can get somebody empowered to simply just read even, minor irregularities in blood work like that, then they're able to kind of get the bug for, okay, well, this looks a little off. Why might that be off? And then it inspires them to kind of dig a little bit deeper and maybe uncover things that, like you said, left untreated years down the line, then throws off that homeostatic fluid. Doesn't usually do it right away, but down the line, you're preventing something from happening.
Yep. Even simple markers like liver enzymes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
why people get easily hungover, or they're itchy, or their hormones are out of balance. And they can see that AST and ALT is creeping upwards to the upper range of 26 or higher. And that means your liver's not functioning properly. Or if it's below, that 9, 10, then it's probably tapping out. The liver's not performing as it should. And cholesterol, lipid panels, C-reactive protein, all of these markers that can tell us, our risk for cardiovascular disease. And being able to, like you said, see that on paper and pinpoint it and know I should probably address this before it does get worse is really empowering for everyone.
Yes. Yep. And being your own best doctor.
Yep.
Thank you so much for being on the Integrative Health Coach Success podcast. This has been such a fun interview. I think you shared something totally new and inspirational with the listeners, and I'm really, really looking forward to everybody hearing it.
Thank you so much again for having me.
Of course. We'll be in touch soon. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.